Hey there everyone, and welcome to this week's Friday Facts. I'm Exterminator, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you are excited as I am. This is another very interesting one, kind of touching on more ways to get more items, higher production and stuff. And they also do quite a bit of clarification about last week's Friday Facts, which I think was pretty controversial in some ways and had just a lot of chatter going on. So many comments on my last video for it, which is awesome. I read through basically all of them that I know of, and it was really great to see your guys' thoughts. And thank you for all the support on that video. It like really blew up. It seems like it was a really popular topic. But today they were discussing research and technology. But first, let's go over the clarifications about the quality stuff from last week, because there were quite a few concerns and questions and stuff that were also in my comments as well as the forums and all that. So this is by Kovarex, and he goes through and answers quite a few questions. Now I'm going to try to summarize this, but I do think it's important that some of this I do read pretty much exactly, just so the point he's trying to get across does get across. He says it sparked a lot of discussion and debate, and we notice a lot of misconceptions about it, so they want to address some of the biggest ones. First off, when you don't put quality modules somewhere, everything works as before, so you don't have to store everything everywhere as people thought. So, some of you may not have thought this, but basically, there may have been a concern where like you're just always getting different quality stuff and you're constantly having to sort it, which would be a complete nightmare. But quality will essentially be non-existent until you put quality modules into things. Like, you will never be getting anything other than just the default base quality of something until you put quality modules in the production for that item, right? So if you just don't want to deal with it, or you don't want to deal with it to a certain point, you can completely avoid it until you put the quality modules in the machines making the stuff. The random aspect of the mechanic seems to be very upsetting to a lot of people. And Korek says, he has to agree that there's a lot of situations where I hate the randomness in games, but the context really matters. So an example he gave was he had to stop playing Settlers of Catan, which is unfortunate because it's actually one of my favorite games ever. But as he says, as the random dice can decide the winner of the game way too often for my liking. Excuse me. But the Factorio case is very different, and the reason being that you're rarely dependent on the random result, because hopefully you produce at a large scale, and the law of large numbers will just transform probabilities into ratios. The more you produce, the more it evens out. And I know for some people this may not be still a great thing, because some people may just not want to build huge. For someone like me, this is awesome because I like to build, typically really big as I can, and I can just envision now like playing in the expansion where I just build like a massive setup to have a huge production amount trying to get quality, and that will just basically take the randomness kind of out of it and just give like you said, probabilities into ratio, and it kind of just all evens out. The core of what makes Factorio good is that the horrible huge grind you would need to get all the resources can be mitigated by automation, which kind of ties back to this previous point. It is quite similar with quality, as the annoyance of the grind and unpredictability related to randomness in other games can be just pummeled by the sheer output of your factory. Again, this is like what I love is, if there's something that's unpredictable or you just want more, you can just build more. And I can see this happening with the quality where, maybe it's kind of too random for you, or you're just not getting enough of the higher quality. You just double your setup, triple your setup, and you're just getting more more and more of it, and then you can factor in the recycling and stuff. So that really helps too. The most simple approach is to produce all the ingredients in normal quality. So most of the factory typically produces non-quality stuff and mainly provides for research non-quality, and a huge amount of items to be produced by the small quality part. In our playthroughs, the parts of the factory which were dealing with the quality were less than 5% of the whole factory, so don't worry about being forced to solve all the mixed quality items everywhere. So you can just dedicate like a little section in your factory to make the quality stuff, and the rest of it will just go about its business like normal, and you don't even have to worry about it. And you can just upgrade the parts of your factory that you want when you want with the higher quality stuff once you get it. The names are the easiest thing to change. So I did see some comments about the names. Somebody had a really good suggestion for the names in the comments in my last video, and I couldn't track it down before I started this video, but there was some really a post with some really good suggestions for names instead of what was provided by the devs, and they do say that Korek says maybe he doesn't take himself and the game too seriously and find it amusing, but if they have a really good counter proposal for names, that they are certainly open to changing it, which is good. I think the names could be more like Factorio-esque than what they currently are, and it's good to hear that they're not super set on the names. The fact that there isn't just the one blueprint for circuits and other builds, because it depends on the stage of the game and your dedication to quality, is something we see as an improvement. Either you have more blueprints for different stages of the game, or you have to improvise more. And mainly, if you actually shoot for the best setups, you can still have the same approach as with beacons, that you build for a legendary setup and just accept that it's not perfect now and upgrade it as you get more of the good items, very similar with beacon setups, before full tier 3 modules are available. Now, this is a little different than like how I play, and I can see this being a slight annoyance for me personally, because the way I play, and I think quite a few mega basers play, is like I won't even build a beacon setup until I have tier 3 modules. Like I will purposely wait and just not even make my final builds until I have the things to actually, like the tier 3 modules to put in the beacons and the assemblers and have tier 3 assemblers. And the quality, I suspect, will be similar. I think I would be more open to building a setup with like, rare or epic stuff, basically the way I want, and then just upgrading it to legendary later. But generally, I feel as if I would probably just wait until I have legendary everything for the build before I even design the thing, which is fine. I definitely am in favor of the fact of there not just being one blueprint like that you can just use forever of everything. I know some people like to play that way. Personally, I mean, this is part of the reason why, if you've ever watched like my playthroughs or my streams, I very rarely transition blueprints between playthroughs. I usually design blueprints like on the spot, on the fly, every playthrough, because I don't like just using the same thing over and over and over again. I like changing it up and doing something new, and this kind of just adds to that. He says, I use the it's optional argument, but I didn't mean it as an excuse for it's shitty, but it's okay because you don't have to use it. I understand that if the mechanics provide an upgrade, you can't say it's optional, since, naturally as like a gamer and playing Factorio and being an optimizer, you want to progress to the better stuff. And it's painful to decide to ignore stuff, because you don't like the mechanics to get there. This leads to the big proverb we always repeat: the best strategy needs to be fun. The main part of the optionality was that you decide optionally where and when you want to use it. There's still players who prefer to play without beacons and modules, so some small value in the optionality for these exists as well, which is true. Like, I've had people say they just do not play with beacons because they don't like beacons, and that's fine. And I think the same could be said for the quality. The very last frequent opinion was that it would be better use for this opportunity to introduce a lot of interesting custom recipes to get all the qualities of different items. And this is where Kovarex and I completely have the same opinion. Because, like, for anyone who's been around for a while, you know that I am not a fan of playing Biles Mobs, Piano Dins, anything like that. C-Block, crazy stuff like that. And Kovarex seems to be the same way. He says that basically, he only designs, he can only design the game around what he enjoys, and he just does not enjoy having to keep track of a huge number of unique recipes, which all work technically basically the same. The fact that the most simple approach mostly means using similar blueprints to produce different kinds of quality items is generally a goal, as it helps to downscale the time investment needed to progress, since this is just one of the expansion mechanics. We want to keep the game time reasonable. I would compare it to repeating the design of rail intersections. Basically, no one's complaining that they can repeat their blueprint in many places, because you have blueprints and construction bots to avoid the grind of building the thing over and over again. So in other words, there's a relatively straightforward way to go through it and get the best items, but the design still allows for some very non-trivial custom setups if you want to optimize more and enjoy the theory crafting. Easy to learn, hard to master, and this is the type of thing, at least I really enjoy. Like, getting the stuff is not that complicated, but the different builds you can do with it is, you can get really fine-tuned with that. And so here's like an example. He goes, basically saying that the overall design was driven by our own enjoyment. We play the game and we don't want it to bloat with grindy clutter. Obviously, it can't be expected that everyone's going to enjoy games the way he does, or even that I do, or whatever. It's just that, he believes there's enough players who will enjoy it, and I hope that's the case. I think this is a really good feature. I'm fully behind it, and this setup's really cool. So basically, they're making tier 3 assemblers with quality modules in them. And remember, if you didn't put quality modules in here, you wouldn't even have to worry about quality. You just would be getting tier 3 assemblers default all the time. But they have quality modules in here, and they're getting different quality tier 3 assemblers out. And then they just have some very simple filter splitters for each level of quality. So there's just basic assemblers, and then common, rare, epic, and legendary that filters through. And obviously you want to keep legendary, but then anything lower than that, once these chests, they say down in the caption below, but once these chests get over 100, they dump the extra into the recyclers to send it all the way back through the process again. Is essentially how that's working. And you'll notice that any higher than, default quality parts, so modules and stuff, are actually being sent the other direction, back around this way, and sent the other direction this way, and then sent back in to remake these, and then it goes all the way back through the system, etc., etc. And that's basically just what they say here. So that's that. I know this was kind of a long part of the thing, even though it's not talking about new stuff that we didn't already hear about last week, but these clarifications are important. I hope this answers some questions that people had and maybe clarifies things and makes you warm up a little bit to the idea. And if you're not, everyone's welcome to their opinion and enjoy the game how they want, or not like what they want, so that's totally fine too. Personally, I am very behind this feature. I really like this. And we get into some really good stuff down here. So, discovering new materials. This is written by V. When it comes to how planets and especially the unique resources are discovered, we have realized problems with how Factorio has been doing this for a while. So, if a planet is unlocked by a tech on some science tier, then the starting resources of the planet would also be gated behind those same science packs, right? Because you don't have anything else available yet. This would mean that you could, and typically would, already be researching ways to process the new unique resources that you have not even seen yet. Which maybe is true. I mean, they could kind of just stop this by having the unique resources. Well, actually, no, they couldn't. Yeah, so this is the problem. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Another most fundamental conflict was that we wanted the progress on each planet to result in a single new science pack, resulting in a chicken and egg situation, which is kind of what I was about to say and then backtracked on. I realized is basically a chicken and egg situation. The problem would be the science pack should need most of the new unique resource processes on the planet. Therefore, you need to somehow get to discovering the processing first. The alternative would have been that the science pack is made available just immediately when you land, but that's like super boring and not really great. And then, the primary export for the planet would be the science pack. So that's also not super, well, that is the case, but then in order to prevent plans being just simple mining outposts with a rocket silo, they want to make sure most of the processing could be used to produce the science pack. So they tried to different solutions and stuff, and none of them really worked, and then they came to the final solution, which was really pretty simple. Trigger technology. So they added a new method of researching a technology. Instead of processing science packs in a laboratory, technologies can now be completed with a trigger. And this is very similar to a lot of other games, where the trigger is basically just completing an action rather than putting packs in a lab and researching. Now, before anybody panics, because I did initially when I read this is not for every tech. Like you're obviously still making science packs. They're still a thing. You're still researching. This is just for some specific stuff. A lot of early game stuff, and then like unlocking some stuff on the new planet. So they list a few here. Mining an entity, crafting an item fluid, and launching a rocket with a certain item will unlock a tech. This means that each time you land on a planet, you discover and exploit its new resources in a way that feels quite natural, as everything happens while you're actually there, which is great. And then this will make a lot more sense with specific examples once they show them, and they can apply this elsewhere. So kind of just going back to what's in the game right now, there are times even now where you encounter this issue they discussed, like with oil, or uranium processing, where you can research oil or even uranium processing before you even find the resource, right? Because like oil and uranium are not found in your starting area. So if you're not pretty actively exploring, you could definitely get to oil processing research before you even found oil. And if it's your first time playing, that's like kind of, jolting, because it's like, well, I have this, but there's none of this resource available. Like, what am I supposed to do, right? So this kind of helps with that. Is they give an example here. So basically, this like oil processing would be unlocked by mining crude oil. So you have to find the resource before you can actually unlock the thing. And then same with this, you would mine uranium, and that would unlock uranium processing. So you won't have the processing before you find the resource and mine it. Now, in order to really get into oil processing, so they basically said this, you will need to have touched some crude oil. This helps prevent a situation where, especially in the green science tier, a lot of players would research very far ahead, and then they'd be overwhelmed with like too many recipes piling up and stuff that they didn't really anticipate before. And then they can do this with early game as well. So, why does the player immediately know how to craft steam engines, inserters, transport belt, etc.? It always feels much better in games when your progression starts as low as possible and you can earn all the things in a logical process. So an example is like craft 50 iron plate and you unlock steam power, right? Which makes sense. Just by making burner miners and stuff to mine more resources, you're easily going to achieve this, and then you would get steam power. Electronics, craft 10 copper cables, super easily to get this before you would need any of these things. And then they say some unlocks like electric mining drill, radar, or repair packs don't need to be available at the very beginning. So in turn, we could add them into their own new red science technologies, which is, again, totally fine, I think. Like, typically I have handcrafted some red science and done a couple researches before I need electric miners. Now, I do usually rush to electric miners, so I don't know, like, it doesn't look like they would really put this that far into things. It wouldn't really be that much of a problem, and generally it does make more sense. Excuse me. Early game technology graph, you can also see, for example, steel axe technology now requires you to craft actual steel plates, so you can't just get the steel axe upgrade without having made steel, which has always been weird since the steel axe is no longer an item. Yeah, that's definitely a weird thing. As a result, the following will be all of your starting recipes. Getting back to having unlocked all the recipes you were used to at the start doesn't really take any extra time than previously. The early trigger technology only requires a minimal amount of items to be crafted, but it still contributes to progression. So, like, this is what would be available when you first start the game, and this is fine. Like, there's not much here, but this is all you need, really. Just some miners and all that. I mean, I would argue you don't even need belt or even inserters, really, but that's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. So having all this to begin with, and then you would just unlock these things pretty simply by just doing what you would be doing anyway. So I really like this. This makes sense, and this also really helps with the later stuff, like the planets, is you would like go to the planet and then start mining the resources or whatever, and then you would unlock stuff for the science or the processing to get the science. Totally makes sense to me. And then, as will become apparent with more things in future Friday Facts, during the development and expansion, we have arrived to various topics, just like this, that stretch beyond the acceptable weirdness threshold and had to address it in Space Age. The improvements also impacted the base game in a good way, and we are certain that mods will make good use of them as well. So this is really exciting to hear. I'm really interested to see what else they've changed like this, that are just like kind of base mechanics of the game that they found to be really weird. That they're changing. So I'll be really interested to see this. Now I'm going to just summarize this whole thing like in like 2 sentences. This is not at all to discredit what Clona wrote. It's just a very simple summarization. Research queue is now permanently enabled, which is fantastic. So, initially when they developed it, there was community feedback and stuff that it maybe, had some drawbacks and stuff, where it's like confusing to people or whatever. So they made it basically so you had to change a setting in your map settings to have it enabled from the start. Otherwise, it would just enable with a rocket. But they've gotten rid of all that, and with the expansion, not not right now, I don't think, unless they release this in like a 1.1 branch, which would be great. But research queue is just going to be a thing always. There's no option to turn it on or off. And this is fantastic. This is something I have complained and ranted about ever since they made it a thing to toggle in your map settings. It drove me absolutely nuts. So I am super, super excited about this. Long time coming. Now, guys, I know it's been a long wait, but we had to start at the top and go down. This is the really interesting part down here for me. Productivity researches, again by Clonin. So they wanted to add some more infinite technologies and also reduce the resource pressure as the game goes along. The mining productivity is great, and it works very well, but it doesn't give the player much choice in the in-game. Basically, everything else is you get robot speed, and then you get combat researches, and that's it. Like, most of them are combat researches. You get artillery, bullet damage, laser damage, all this stuff. When biters are such a small part of the game, and a lot of people don't even play with them at this point, I feel like, really your only options were mining prod and robot speed. And after a point, the robot speed doesn't really help people except for mega basers. So they added a new type of productivity research, the recipe productivity research. Each level will increase the built-in productivity of certain recipes, such as steel processing units, rock control units, etc. This is really, really interesting. So you can see an example here, rocket control unit productivity 2, rock control unit productivity plus 10%. And this is an infinite research, which, excuse me, I can see this. I'm a little interested how they'll balance this because this seems like this could get out of hand really quickly. That's not a complaint. I'm actually really excited for this, but I can just see this like getting absolutely insane, but we'll have to see. So they also wanted to let you unlock something super powerful for the in-game, which allowed us the idea of the research productivity. Each level will increase the built-in productivity of labs, which is insane too. So you get lab speed researches, like that's what we have now, and then you can put proud modules in labs, but then if you also get built-in productivity of the labs, that's super, super good. Will require the in-game resources, of which details will come in future Friday Facts. So, I mean, it is like a really late game. Like, you'll probably have to get every science pack from every planet to be able to do that. And then they say, as always, let us know what you think at the usual places. So, excuse me, I'm going to just mute really quick and sneeze. Apologies for that. My allergies are very bad today. So this is like the shortest section, but this is just super, super awesome and interesting to me because now there were some questions I was talking with in one of my moderators group and stuff that we have, and the guys who make my mods, and we were discussing how is this going to work with like stacking with like machine or like module productivity and stuff, because they said in the previous Friday Facts with the quality that they're capping machine productivity at 300% to not create like an infinite positive feedback loop or whatever with recyclers. But this is different than that, and I wonder how this is going to work, because I feel like couldn't this still create that continuous feedback loop of like an infinite resource generator? Because the machines with the modules are capped at 300% productivity, but this is not the machine. And this is an infinite research, so obviously there's no cap to it technically. If you have a 300% productivity machine and you also have your rocket control units at like 100% or 200% productivity, obviously that'd be insanely expensive, but hypothetically, wouldn't you be able to just like produce such a large, like, it would just be so much productivity that you could recycle the things and basically just create an infinite resource loop? I'm not quite sure how that'll work. Like, obviously, I trust the devs to balance this, and I can't imagine they hadn't thought of this. But I'm just very interested how this will work, or maybe I'm misunderstanding just completely how this will work. If someone wants to correct me, definitely let me know in the comments. But overall, I absolutely love this because, again, as a mega baser, and I'm experiencing this right now in my 10k science per minute mega base on my streams, you hit a game performance limit. Like right now, my computer is seriously struggling to run my base. I'm at like 40 UPS, and even then it's hard to keep up sometimes. And what this allows you to do It's just build even bigger and get more resources out of smaller spaces. I mean, it's just like a productivity module, but it doesn't require modules, and it's an infinite research. Like imagine, and this obviously compounds too, right? Because imagine if you have, starting at like the bottom or whatever, let's say you have productivity, let's say you have 50% productivity research for your processing units and your steel, and you have max quality productivity modules in your machines. That's producing, like, that's so much extra stuff you're getting for the input resources. And then on top of that, like the processing units are getting the productivity, but then you also have, say, 50% productivity on your rocket control units with research with the modules. And then on top of that, you also have your productivity lab researches to like 100% or 50% or whatever. Like this can just get crazy powerful. And I don't say that in a bad way, because it's not like I don't really see an issue as long as you can't create an infinite resource loop. Obviously, that could be a problem. But otherwise, I don't really see like a huge issue with it just being super powerful as long as the research cost corresponds with it. Because it's not like we're in like a competitive environment or something where like something where things need to be. It's not like a like League of Legends or something where if one character is super powerful, it just messes up everything for everybody. Like things are so powerful. Like if you can just make, 10k science per minute in with all of your builds and everything being like a fifth of the size as they are now, basically what that means is you could just make like 5 times the amount of science. So what if I could do 50k science per minute, which is fantastic for me. It's obviously going to be expensive because I imagine these, I would guess these scale probably the same way as the robot researches. I can't possibly imagine that they would scale like mining prod, where it's just like an additive thing. Like this has to be I can never say this word, multiplicative thing. Like it just doubles every time, like the robot research. Because otherwise this would just be insane. I feel like this has to get incredibly expensive very quickly. But even then, I can see this just being super powerful. But I don't want to drag this out any longer. It's already been too long of a Friday Facts for what was here probably, or a video. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching and sticking to the end. If you did, I really appreciate it. I would love to hear your thoughts with this. It was great reading all the comments last week. And I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about all this week. If you did enjoy, a like is really appreciated as well. And if you're new, welcome. And feel free to drop a sub if you want to keep up with future content, Friday Facts discussions every week. I cannot wait until next week, man. We're only two weeks in since the announcement of the expansion. We have like at least 45, 50 weeks to go, and we're already getting this amazing stuff. Like you can probably hear my voice. I'm just super pumped. I can't imagine what else they have to show us. So this is just fantastic. Thank you all so much. Leave your thoughts below. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.